Hey there, Murray from MBM, as usual. You must be getting sick of me by now. This one's called a question of quality. Often I get asked by people, what is the difference between a $200 flute and a $2,000 flute? You think it looks obvious, don't you? But it's not always that obvious. Particularly when you're looking at buying that first instrument, the question always raises its head, do I buy cheaper or do I buy something that's going to last and hope the junior plays it? Cheap and cheerful works well. And you get various budget types. Now, it doesn't matter. I'm going to use a flute as I did in the previous one, simply because I've got the camera sitting right over the top of it and it's framed and it's nice and easy and ready to go. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the difference in quality in instruments, particularly woodwinds. Brass, it's not too bad. The biggest thing you notice in brass playing is the weight of the instrument and whether the valves are smooth or not smooth. Valves stick. I've had instruments that have come in and everything we've tried to do with them, the valve just simply doesn't work. Often it's because there's very, very loose springs and things in it. So brass is not too much of a problem. Any brass you'll get a sound out of, provided the instrument's in 100% playing condition. And you know, you don't have to spend a lot to have something to start with. Woodwinds, different story. Now, if I just change cameras for a moment, we're here. We've got our friend the flute again. Here it is sitting in its case. It looks like everything, like it looks the same as a pearl. It looks the same as a $1,000 flute. Why is this one cheaper? And I'm not going to go into brand names. I'm really not interested. I just want you to be aware of what you can see when we're playing. They all come like this. If it's a flute, if it's a clarinet, the biggest issue that we have, if you look here, is, I'll just try and make sure that it's not reflecting in the light, but you can see lots of rods, springs, screws, all those sorts of things. In fact, you can see, this one's in for service by the way, but you can see there's a screw that's hanging out. And if we do that, you know, that's one of the things that will be sorted in service. But all these things are usually very soft in the cheaper instrument. They use a softer metal in the springs. They use a softer metal and a thinner metal in the pads. Now what happens, of course, even with moderate use, which is what I would determine a primary school age child would do, these pads, the actual keys can bell. They can go like so. And you can usually see, if you look along, we'll go back to the other camera, thanks JB. If you have a little look along, and I'll just hold it along this way, if you look down along here, quite often you'll see that the pads have a bit of a dish in them, so that when they're doing, like, they're not sitting flat, and that can cause you so many problems. Tends to be more in flutes and saxophones because they're metal, and the pads are what they call an underslung type pad, whereas in clarinets the pads are usually a cone shape and they're flatter. You also find they save a lot of money in the type of material the pads are made. We might go back to the other camera, we can get in a little bit closer, but you can see, if you have a look, I'm just trying to, whoop, I brought it out of camera shot by accident. If you have a look there, in the top of each one has a pad. Now those pads are not cheap. Well, they are on the cheaper instrument because they use felt covered in tissue paper. A proper pad is felt covered with a bladder, an actual skin on it that seals and keeps the moisture out of the pad. I have a lot of issues with flutes and clarinets coming in of the cheaper variety where pads fall out and they're not really glued in, they're just stuck in by pressure. So the manufacturing is a little bit cheaper as well. These are things to look after and look out for. It doesn't mean that you can't buy a good instrument or an instrument that will get you started very simply. What it does mean is buyer beware. You get what you pay for. If you buy a $50 instrument, that's what you get. I know a lot of people who have thrown them off at Aldi and said, Aldi, which is a grocery store here in Australia, why are they selling instruments? Because they can. They buy them in by the pallet. They're not even pretending to be musical instrument companies, but they sell the instrument and they'll replace it if it goes wrong. There are no problems with them at all in that. But it's quite a good way to start, and you can actually get some quite good instruments. However, look around. If you're buying by the name brands, if you want an instrument that's going to last, spend the money on it. This is really important. Look after it. And we'll see you playing for many years. Thanks. See you later.